Welcome back to class, scholars. In today's class, we shall be discussing clue on how to study a poem. By the end of this class, you should be able to 1. Identify the basic steps involved in analyzing a poem. And secondly, you should be able to analyze poems using the S.M.I.L.E formula or format. Steps in poem analysis are 1. The first thing you should do is read the poem several times until it is well understood. Read the poem as many times as possible to grasp the content or the main idea of the poem. This is the very first step in poem analysis. And afterwards, you analyze what you have read with S.M.I.L.E formula. As you can see, this is an acronym. This is an acronym that helps students remember what to look out for when analyzing the poem. This is the reason why I'm introducing you to this formula or to this acronym, because it guides you on what to look out for when you're analyzing poems. What does this S.M.I.L.E represent? The S represents structure, the M meaning, I imagery, L language, then the last letter E represents effect. Now we're going to look into each of these letters and what they represent. The letter S here represents structure. In poem analysis, structure explains how a poem is organized. When you are analyzing a poem, you consider the structure, that is, you ask yourselves the following questions. How many stanzas are there in the poem? And how did the poet develop the idea? What type of narrative perspective was used by the poet? The first person or the third person? How many lines are in each stanza? Is there rhyme or are there rhyme schemes? So answering all of these questions helps you to be able to explain the structure of a poem. The next letter is letter M. Letter M in the acronym S.M.I.L.E represents meaning. To capture the meaning of a poem, you must be able to identify the message or the idea of the poem. That's the reason why the poet wrote the poem. Ask yourself the following questions. What is the poem about? Does it have any message? Is the poet discussing in the poem? If you can answer all of these questions, you'll be able to explain the main idea of the poem, and this falls under the letter M. You should also be able to identify the overall themes or idea in the poem. All of these things forms or helps you to be able to analyze a poem. The next letter there is the letter I. The letter I stands for imagery. Imagery provides physical details that enables readers imagine the scene that is being created by the poet. Imagery is an element poetry that appeals to one or more of our five senses, such as the sense of touch, sense of smell, sense of taste, sound, and sight. So imagery appeals to one or more of these senses, and it helps the readers understand the feeling of the poet. Under imagery, you ask questions like, what pictures comes to mind when I read the poem? When I read the poem, are there any images created in my mind? In creating images, poets employ some figurative languages such as simile, metaphor, and personification to ensure that the readers are able to relate with their feelings and the idea they are trying to communicate or convey to them. The next letter is letter L. The letter L represents or indicates language. Language here refers to the diction or the choice of words. That is the kind of words used by the poet, considering if they are simple words used or they are complex or complicated words used in the poem. When you check all of this out, these are things that help you to analyze the poem. Under language, you also consider if the poet employs other figurative languages, figures of speech, such as simile, metaphor, personification, apostrophe, hyperbole, euphemism, and also if the poet employs sound devices such as alliteration, assonance, consonance, amongst others. If they did, then you can identify from the lines of the poem how these figurative languages were used. Then lastly, we consider the last letter in the acronym, which is letter E. The letter E represents effect. And under the element effect, we consider the effect of the poem on the readers. Now you ask yourself the following question: how do I feel after reading the poem? Do I feel good? Do I feel sad? You also consider what the mood of the poem tells us about how the author, how the poet feels. Now, effect has to do with the corresponding feeling, the feeling that the audience gets as a result of the poem, or how the tone of the poet makes the audience feel. This falls under the element effect in the S.M.I.L.E. acronym. Hope you've been able to understand the basic steps involved in analyzing the poem and how to employ the S.M.I.L.E. formula in analyzing poems. Join me in my next class as we go further into analyzing poems using the acronym S.M.I.L.E, which represents structure, meaning, imagery, language, and the effect of a poem. Thank you for watching. See you in the next class. Bye.